Hello, and welcome to Dice Punks, a tabletop role-playing podcast where we focus on playing full campaigns in less well-known systems. This week, the Frontispiece 4 begin their investigations into both Vrutech and the odd device they're keeping prisoner. Hello and welcome. I'm Adam, your friendly neighborhood game master, and joining me are...
Hello, I'm Drew, and I'll be playing Hecate, also known as Cato Burke, also known as, hey, our number of solutions is reaching our number of problems gradually.
Hi, I'm Robin, and that's right, I'll be playing Callisto Armitage, but that's officer to you.
I'm Dez, and I'll be playing Matchstick, who has a number of other names that may or may not be relevant ever.
And my name's Nick. I will be playing Ing. They're the kind of android who will lend you a hand in your time of need, but you do have to promise to take good care of it.
Give it back when you're done.
Moisturize.
Yes.
Always moisturize.
Moving on. Thank you, players. Yeah, dude, I can only think about Ing's flesh horticulture for so long.
And usually in the middle of the night, unbitten.
About 3:30 in the morning.
When the hand is holding the clock up at you.
Cold sweat, thinking of cold flesh.
Crawling from the depths of your subconscious.
Does he shave them? Middle of the night.
What's the nail care like on that thing?
I think
All right,
feel
well,
like
I
that's
can
been
no
addressed in text a
longer-
little bit, huh? Yeah.
A little bit.
Mhm.
I can no longer say thanks, players. So without those things,
dear listener, the expression on Adam's face is priceless.
Each day we
Your
drift farther from the
contributions.
Hollyhock God's grace.
Okay, it's time for a recap. I declare unilaterally it is time for a recap. That recap is Cato's this time, if you would do the honors.
Around lunch on Saturday, January 4th, 2020, K&B sent me a message. Had she made Byrne mad? Isn't that the question? I'd also asked Bronwy whether we had anyone who had it out for us at present, and isn't that really the question? So Byrne, Matchstick, and I, that's only two people if you're not keeping up, prepared to meet K&B in her virtual chat space, while Cal and Ing stood guard in the frontispiece. Cal did some cop shit to look into Caleb Dryden, a.k.a. Canopus, who had been delinquent, cop speak for careful, at multiple addresses. Worth looking into. Ing, meanwhile, had found a little ferret drone trying to invade and fiddle with our guest. And our guest, meanwhile, muttered some digits of pi, but didn't stir and didn't try to kill anyone. So, a win. K&B, it seems, had accessed the corpus for an LLM put together by a bunch of cartel aspirant corpos. Vrutech stands out in my memory, and she'd figured out a way to suss out the provenance of their data and to exclude its fruits from one's research, from one's daily life. This was frowned upon by the powers that be. There was a spotlight on her and a strong desire to co-opt what she'd made to make the net worse, as corpos will. In order to scrub the evidence from their servers, it seems, we will need access to those servers. Yes, we. We're in this now, since we have a set of skills that K&B doesn't, and I suppose maybe also a recklessness that she doesn't. Give it time. Speaking of recklessness, she seemed to know what so many people, or how so many people, rather, seemed to know about the auction. Namely, bad OPSEC. On the part of Ruprecht Vecht, a professor at GPol, and sometime patron of Izakaya Po'boy. We know this, of course, because while Byrne ate hacker chow, the rest of us went to that fascinating miscalculation of a restaurant for a bite, or, in Ing's case, for a soaking up of vibes and a discussion about gender. That unsolvable problem, gender. On the way out, we now realize, Vecht was speaking to a singularist named Kovalevi. We know that we saw Vecht's moped. We know multiple ways to find him. I'll be bringing him some out-of-print books. Byrne is tracking him digitally. Ing is going to drop in on an open-to-the-public Zen Buddhist meditation where he just might run into our quarry or someone who knows him. And Cal is doing more cop shit. And we know something else, too. There's a greengrocer named Mr. Choi, K&B said, who could be an informant. Surprisingly concrete. So, off we go.
Woo.
Well said. Thank you.
Fuck yeah.
Could not keep
So,
my chuckles in.
Was very
Nor did you
good.
need to.
The chuckles have escaped.
Yeah, we pick up
Quick,
here
go capture them.
in what I would call the pre-dinner hour, or hours, depending on your preferences, of Saturday, the 4th of January, 2020. Those announcements of what people were doing is where we left off last time. So I think probably the most eventful things here are Cato attempting to lay hands on some books that may be useful for borrowing some of Professor Vecht's time, and Ing dropping in on the sort of campus org adjacent Zen Buddhist meditation session. We can handle these things in whatever order we like, or if we feel strongly about it, we can start with someone else. But this will sort of transition us, I think, into the larger, longer time scale process of accruing prep for our Vrutech mission.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely cross-referencing past syllabi, seeing if I can find something Vecht might be excited to see.
I think that probably calls for an investigation roll.
Yeah, that seems
Sound
reasonable.
about right. Yeah, so that's going to be your clever here, which is going to be 2d6 plus 2.
Sounds good. A 3 and a 2, which is 5 plus 2 is 7.
So you are reasonably easily able to cross-reference syllabi. Unfortunately, as I think came up last time, Professor Vecht mostly assigns electronic textbooks, which is not super unusual for Grand Cross in general or GPol in particular. But the electronic textbooks that Professor Vecht assigns are not in this, bit of research you've done anyway, ones that have print counterparts. And you are, in the course of about a half an hour of research and checking against inventory, pretty frustrated by the lack of meaningful overlap.
As I'm starting to get frustrated, I go to a box in the back where I keep some antiques. I have some zip drives and the media that go into them.
Uh-huh.
Let's say I have
That's
two.
an attack.
Let's say I have 3 and only one works, right? Like reliably.
Naturally. So you start sorting through your zip disks and drives and such. And you do have some, we'll call them e-textbooks of dubious provenance. And, maybe it's for the best that you don't have any of the specific ones that Professor Vecht assigns, but you maybe have some that are adjacent to his subject that he wouldn't already have access to. It's not a sure thing, but closest you can get.
Okay, I set about transferring these to a medium that a reasonable human of this decade could actually read or access.
Yeah, that's going to take some time.
Indeed.
So let's bop on over to Ing. Ing, you are headed to a campus adjacent building. Now, this is a term that requires a little bit of qualification in Selden District because so much of it is technically campus adjacent, but the building that you're headed to is literally right across a street from sort of the main campus building block. The big monolithic brutalist structure that takes up the middle of Selden District. It is a smaller building with more traditional terrestrial architecture, which would make it bland in any number of places in sort of, broadly speaking, the West back on Earth. But it actually makes it stand out a little bit here. It would be familiar to almost anybody who went to a U.S. college or university as the type of building that would have a sign outside that said something like Wesley Foundation or Campus Crusade for Christ or even Hillel House. And it is a shared space among a number of the sort of smaller, less well-funded campus religious organizations, with a sign outside announcing that the event of the night is the Zen Buddhist meditation session with the sort of generically named Buddhist Students Association. It is a what we might call big tent.
Okay. Well, I'd like to walk in and see what I see.
Mhm. Well, you are apparently right on time. There are a small handful, say, 7 people sort of milling about, a couple talking, a couple just kind of standing around. This is the point in the academic calendar where some people have moved in, some more people will be moving in the next 3 or 4 days. Others have been here the whole time.
Like Sam Reich.
A lot of the student body, sort of took the opportunity to head elsewhere. Some of the more well-to-do ones, perhaps even to visit Earth. So, turnouts in most places are lower. And of course, there are some new students as well. So everybody's sort of quiet and sort of standing together. But as you take this in, the doors to sort of the main event space open. And a woman of middle years with sort of a medium dark complexion, wearing something approximating a robe, sort of gestures genially for people to come in without speaking. You quickly, of course, notice that you are the only android present.
Not entirely unusual, depending on the space.
Indeed not.
I glance around. Are people generally already talking to each other as though they know each other?
There are 2 pairs who are conversing quietly, and most other people are kind of just standing with varying degrees of awkwardness. Some on a 1 to 10 scale of awkwardness are around a 1 to 2. A couple others are maybe up around a 7 or 8.
Okay. I not sure how soon the service itself is going to be starting, but if there's a minute or two, I'll just maybe I'll feel like maybe I feel more comfortable with those that are feeling a bit awkward. So might go and see if I can strike up a conversation with one of them. Simple.
Sure. So, you wouldn't necessarily be able to articulate in words your decision-making process here, but you find yourself approaching a person who appears awkward to you because she is sort of just staring into the middle distance, which in this case means a blank wall about 5 feet away, but who is dressed unusually. She is a young woman with sort of short, dark hair and olive skin, dressed in what appears to be a controversial take on a nun's habit with some stars embroidered into it in sort of silver and in white in various places. She also has a pretty prominent suite of augments adorning the back of her head and sort of the back and sides of her neck in ways that look like they wouldn't necessarily be comfortable. She's, I haven't mentioned it yet, on the short side, and doesn't really seem to register your approach as you walk up.
All right. I will give a little space and kind of sidle around until I'm at least at the periphery of her vision, and just say, "Hey there, how you going?"
As soon as you speak, her eyes like snap to you, and she faces you, and she gives a smile that shows teeth, but doesn't really seem to affect the rest of her face as much as it should. You notice that she has interesting dentistry. A few of her teeth are either veneered or replaced in something metallic, including her upper canines, which are in sort of a polished chrome and are longer and pointed. She seems at first not to be focusing on you, but then you realize that what you're actually looking at are augmented eyes that have a static sort of veneer over them of like a human iris and pupil. So when she focuses on you, the lenses inside change focal length, but the pupils don't really move. Sort of thing that not everybody would necessarily pick up on, but you are uniquely equipped to be on the lookout for. She responds, "Oh, I'm fine. Are you here for the meditation?"
Yeah, I don't have any experience, but is that all right? Beginner's welcome?
Oh, I'm told they're very welcome, which I hope is true. I've only been here once before, and it was a different person in charge. I'm not 100% sure what they would be. She just trails off and looks to one side of your head.
Yeah, well, glad I'm not the only one. I hope you don't mind me saying it's an impressive set of Augies you got there.
When you start speaking again, her eyes kind of snap back to you, and she says, "Oh, well, they're an ongoing project. Someday I'll figure it all out, but currently it's frustratingly unresolved."
Yeah, well, I feel like it's important to work on ourselves. And sometimes that's internal, sometimes it's external, but I don't want to bore you, but I've always kind of thought that there's like a connection between the two that's sometimes, there's a boundary between them that is overemphasized, I think, in our society. There's a bit more of a mercurial relationship between the two, internal, external. They affect each other,
Her smile suddenly spreads to the rest of her face. Her mouth doesn't move, but her eyes crinkle, her cheeks flex. There's an added warmth to her face, and she says, "You do understand. Marvelous. Everyone thinks that the soul is separate from the body, that the mind is spiritual in a way that the meat is not, but they're wrong."
I don't. Look, I'm just going to put it out there because he seemed to be somebody who's given this some thought. I guess I'm not sure when people say the soul, whether that's inherently organic. Are people referring to sentience, or is it something more, do you think?
She nods eagerly, but you're not sure to what part of your statement she is nodding. And she starts to gesture a little bit more emphatically, and she says, "No, you understand. A mind is the hardware that runs consciousness, and it is consciousness that we refer to as a soul.
Yeah.
So surely we can use the physical to affect our consciousness, our soul, and achieve communion with the divine. I've done it, but I can't recreate the experience." She gestures at everything on the back of her head and neck. And she says, Have you communed?"
I don't think so.
She pats your arm just above your wrist and says, "You will. I know you will."
And communed with what or with whom?
She grimaces. "That's what I'm trying to figure out. Everyone says that I was too young to know my own mind, but I wasn't. I know what I felt, I know what I saw, and I will find it again. I don't know which experience will get me there, but eventually it will come. And if we can prove not just that I can get there through augments, but that you can get there, then no one will be able to argue that we're wrong. No one will be able to argue that there's something else, something intangible, something disconnected from the body. It's the body that is divine because it houses the divine."
That's an interesting perspective. And it seems like it flies in the face of, at least the religions that I've come across that seem as though the soul is something that transcends or lives beyond the consciousness.
She waves a hand dismissively and she says, "Dualism got in early, but that doesn't make it correct. It's a cul-de-sac, a dead end that we've been chasing for untold millennia now. And where has it gotten us? No closer to understanding." I read an interview a while back where a neurologist argued that there couldn't be any such thing as a soul because there was no measurable communication between the body and the mind and the neurological circuitry that we can measure and something outside of it. And I couldn't articulate it immediately in that moment, but I knew they were wrong. It's not that the mind is an antenna communicating with some spiritual thing outside of us. It's that the mind is itself the home of the soul. The mind is part of the body. The body is the home of the soul. The soul is the experience of being alive, of being sentient, of being sapient, of being... And she is interrupted at this point by the woman directing the meditation who calls out from the door, "If you would like to participate, this would be the time to enter, please."
I give another glance at the lady that I've been speaking to or listening to, and then head in, inside or over to the indicated space.
Yeah, she looks back. She glances at you as you glance at her, and she gives a half smile and falls silent as you head into the area set aside for meditation. The meditation itself is calming. It is probably fairly pleasant. It's sort of a minimally guided meditation, but it's refreshing. And the only thing that really interrupts it is that your conversation partner from before it sort of takes her leave about a half an hour before it wraps up with no particular commentary.
Mm. And me without having gotten any contact information.
She's after her.
I mean, that is an option.
Go to her.
You can do whatever you would like.
You better follow her. No, I'm just kidding.
I was just saying, Zen Buddhist meditation is a weekly occurrence at this location that anybody could come to if they wanted to.
I'm going to finish out the meditation or attempt to. I think that my mind keeps drifting, and kind of coming back to the conversation and doing all kinds of thinky bits that it's probably not supposed to be doing during meditation.
This may be a longer tangent than I want it to be, but one of the purposes, and this is certainly going to be bastardized, so if there are any Zen Buddhists listening, I apologize. But one of the goals of Zen Buddhist meditation, as I understand it, is to empty the mind as a way of sort of detaching oneself from desire. You don't want anything. You just are in a state of existence. This is a character decision on your part. How easy does Ing find that, and how appealing do you find that to be?
Ooh, good questions. I think that easiest first, I'll say that it's very difficult for Ing to drop into that state of mind. That he both wants things and wants things not to be. And is, their mind is really kind of a turmoil at this particular moment.
So it is a relaxing experience, maybe even an educational one, but perhaps also in the background a little bit of a frustrating one, in that you don't actually achieve what the goal of the guided meditation is. Of course, the director of the guided meditation, who neglects to introduce herself, is very encouraging. It is not a problem if you don't manage, to clear your mind completely this time. It is an ongoing project. It is the sort of thing that people can spend years trying to perfect, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all very soothing, but you do struggle with it a little bit. Interestingly enough, I have not done a whole lot of research as a person outside of my GM life into Zen Buddhism, but one of the things that I have read is literally the diary of a person who moved into a tiny little mountainside hut with almost nothing and was still convinced that he had failed to actually shed his desires and actually empty his mind. So this seems to be, shall we say, an experience that orthodoxy includes. As far as I'm aware.
I'd also like to add, in terms of his, their experience, that there is a moment that spans about a second or two where there is this kind of an emptiness, and then it flees away like, a fish that's barely glanced from a boat and then swims out of sight.
If you object to this, I will edit it out. But if this is an idea that appeals to you, I will leave it in. As you reach that sort of desired state of an empty mind, in your visual cortex, a screensaver of a little ball bouncing around a screen pops up and jars you out of it.
Yeah.
Is it going to be a brick maze next time?
Who knows? In this moment, you have discovered that some Yahoo way back in the programming of your ancestry apparently left in a screensaver.
A relic from the past. My ancestors speak to me.
You must educate them about the ways of Pong.
Their programming is alive. It speaks through me.
That's what I say every time I have a little bit of anxiety is like, my ancestors, their programming lives in me.
I'm going to start saying that.
No tigers here, but thanks for the heads up.
Yeah.
Yay, generational trauma.
You know, there's a certain point at which accumulated generational trauma and culture are hard to distinguish.
Oh,
true.
Oof. That hurt.
So yeah, I guess
there's a
the
lot
only
to unpack
question. Yeah, the only question left to ask of Ewing before we jump over to another character here is on your way out at the end of this guided meditation session. On your way out of this guided meditation session, is there anything you particularly want to do or say here or to those around you?
I'd like to thank the person that led the meditation. Just, I often feel as though my presence causes others discomfort, and I have developed the habit of doing my best to put those fears at ease with good manners. Sometimes it helps and sometimes it doesn't. So, yeah, I'd like to thank her.
She with a very gracious manner, all are always welcome. You may return to our meditation whenever you like, and I hope to see you again.
I hope so too. And I hope that desire to try this again doesn't get in the way of my enlightenment, eh?
She chuckles and she says, everyone's journey is different and differently difficult.
Right. Well, good evening.
And to you. And with that, you head on out. So I think with that, we're good to jump back over to Kato finishing your task of excavating some more venerable electronic textbooks from zip disks.
This zip disk seems to be indiscriminate. It seems to be every book published whatever year this technology hit the market. But in among all of that, there is a book called Understanding Basic Mechanics. It's a 1995 printing of a book from the 20s, the late 20s, I believe. But it's the kind of thing that's a little tough to find now, and it might be of interest to Vect. So
I'm going to rule that it was originally circulated on CD-ROM as essentially an HTML, just like it loads up a page with some hyperlinks on it and you click to different pages. Each page has a next page, previous page link at the bottom.
Perfect. Yeah, there's CG visualizations on some of the pages as well. Stored on the zip disk at extravagant storage cost.
Mm-hmm. Lot of very sort of sharp pixelated graphics that load in a second later than all the text. A lot of textured backgrounds for pages. Yeah. If you are listening to this and you are alive for the internet of the mid to late 90s, this would be familiar to you.
So if Vect is a person of culture, this will be interesting to him. And if he is a Philistine, it'll still raise an eyebrow and start a conversation.
You get it all loaded up on a USB drive or Grand Cross equivalent thereof. So
Oh no.
I guess
Does Ing have thumb drives that are actually thumbs?
Hope so.
That's
I mean, he
ridiculous.
didn't.
Thumbs can't drive.
Not
I
without
can drive with just my
assistance.
thumbs.
Ing's got some terrible stocking stuffers in store for us all.
Yep.
I can't wait. Coming at you in a future Christmas winter solstice special.
I can hear Kato's voice now being like, Ing, I have to ask, why is my stocking dripping?
Did you not expect a foot to be in the stocking? Because that's on you.
I think
Ing
the
was trying to help
follow-up
you start
there
off on the
is,
right foot.
Ing, I have to ask, what the fuck?
I think it'd be what the foot.
Yep.
That would be Ing's response.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I guess the question is, here in the late afternoon, early evening of a Saturday, Kato, are you trying to go find Professor Vecht in his office? What's the plan? Are you going to save this for later, or are you doing this now?
I think the only other question was, did we decide who's going to go find Mr. Choi? Because that seemed potentially timely as well. But you know what? Let's say whatever we decided about that. I am going to go see Vecht because I hit pay dirt and no time like the present.
To deliver a present. And so it is. You head to campus. Vecht's office is in the JDB. And as is most of the applied robotics department. So you aren't always on campus, but you know your way around well enough. Yeah, head in the main entrance, off to the right, up a couple stairs, down the hall, take a right in a windowless hallway, third door on your left, and it's slightly ajar with some light coming out. You can hear the tappa of a keyboard.
I knock with the small arm.
Door or metal door frame?
Door frame.
Ping, 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 is roughly the sound of the knock. And you hear a voice say, enter.
I enter. I enter.
Mm-hmm. You push the door open. Like a lot of large academic buildings, this is very basic in its construction. Door is sort of a hollow particle board with veneers, with a little bit of weight to it because of the little arm at the top and the locking mechanism on the knob. So you enter. There's fluorescent lighting in the windowless room. There's a desk on the other side. There's a bookshelf with what appear to be pretty much nothing but technical manuals on it. The rest of the office is relatively spare. There are some utilitarian sort of bits of paper, contact sheets, schedules taped in the vicinity of the desk. There is a very sad looking plant of a type that I imagine Kato, as a booksman and technological person, you register as green and in a pot. But if I'm incorrect, and you might know what plant this is, let me know. I'll go into more detail. There's a whiteboard on a wall with some notes to self and some calculations on it. And there is a pitifully small, round, black and gray striped carpet that does not take up nearly enough of the floor. Otherwise, to one side of the desk, there are a couple of one step up from bare minimum folding chairs. The desk itself is strewn with papers and a laptop. The man sitting behind the desk is sitting in a somewhat more comfortable, if very utilitarian, office chair. He is familiar to you from out of the corner of your eye at Izakaya Po'boy, but for our listeners, he is wearing a gray polo shirt and pleated khakis with a black belt. He has a sort of medium pale complexion and brown eyes. He is usually clean shaven, but with a little bit of stubble at this point, as though he hasn't thought about it in a couple of days. And he has graying brown hair that is sort of flying away from the top of his head. If it is a helpful image to anybody, not quite like a sideshow Bob, but closer than any logical person might want to get. He is looking at you as you come in, and he says, "Yes, what can I do for you?"
Oh, I suppose it's more about what I can do for you, actually.
I don't
run
do crimes.
That's very funny. So I run a small and legitimate establishment called the Frontispiece. When I say the name, a canine incisor does appear and gleam wolfishly with an electrum sheen to it. And I am aware that your syllabus has changed quite a bit over the years, but I came upon a text from days of old that probably can't be accessed through any current catalog, and I thought perhaps you might be interested for the edification of the young.
I would like you to roll your cool, which for these purposes is going to be just 2d6 flat out.
Straight up. No chaser. Okay. That is a 4 and a 5. 9.
Okay. He leans back in his chair and sort of steeples his hands and regards you skeptically. He says, "And what made you want to bring these things to me particularly?
Well, your
I am
reputation.
but an associate professor in the applied robotics department. Surely there are others who you would think of first, as stranger as you are."
Well, sure, there are others I would think of first if I was looking to curry favor, but if I'm looking to meet a professor who has a reputation with students as someone who is interested in the topic itself and not merely the prestige attached thereto, well, you were first on my list.
That does not sound very much like you are talking to my students. But what have you? Perhaps I should be interested in what you bring after all.
I take out the piece of media. I fan my hands grandly and asymmetrically.
As he takes the USB drive from presumably your smaller arm.
Yes. No, you know what? It's in the big arm. It's swimming in the sea of the very large arm and the palm thereof.
He takes it. He says, "You have some very interesting prostheses, Mr.
Burke. You can call me Cato, however.
Cato it is then. I suppose that you may call me what you like. I go by Professor Vecht or Ruprecht.
Oh,
Whichever
Professor
you prefer.
Vecht, I insist.
I'm sure you do. Your hardware is unusual. Most people opt for symmetry. It seems, however, that you are more practical in this regard.
Indeed. Yeah, I don't seek golden ratios so much as function. After all, the shape of a day is so rarely symmetrical.
That is a very good turn of phrase. Well done, well done. He plugs the USB drive into his laptop and says, "There, it hasn't automatically run any sort of virus or worm on my computer, so I suppose you are at least a little bit more legitimate than you appear."
I chuckle, but I also look affronted, as though it has never occurred to me that such a thing was possible.
He says, "Yes, this is a very fascinating text. This is retro, perhaps, in a charming kind of way. I assume that you are bringing this to me for marketing purposes. You wish for me to assign books that you sell? Give me your pitch. Perhaps I shall."
Certainly so. I have the ability to acquire, by legitimate means, I assure you, texts that are otherwise unavailable, such as this one. You see, there is simply no fully legitimate way to acquire it, and so such culture, such retro affects belong to us all. Yes, I would love very much for you to send students my way, and for me to help, for us to help them together, but also, I don't know, you just seem like a person worth knowing. You seem like someone who's interested in this sort of thing, and that makes you interesting to me.
He chuckles and he says, "How worth knowing could I be if I am only an associate professor?"
Well, in my experience, The higher in the hierarchy one is, the more, well, let's just say it doesn't fully reflect one's abilities or one's academic acumen. It's got a bit more to do with being a, well, if you'll permit me, a sycophant.
You're going to need to roll another cool for me, sir.
Sure thing. That one went slightly less well. 5 and a 1. 6.
Okay. He sort of makes a face and says, "Yes, I suppose I should be more sycophantic if I wish to rise. Well, it has never been my ambition to move up the university hierarchy, but rather to contribute to the field of robotics. This textbook, while interesting, will not help with that. It is hopelessly outdated. I could never use it with my students, as I do not teach a history of robotics course."
Surely. Well, just for your own interest, then. It's always, I find, interesting to look at the history of an idea. How we, well, sometimes there is the germ of a thing that was left behind when perhaps it shouldn't have been, but even if not, remembering the history of how people came to think what they think, I think can be quite useful. I mean, I don't know. That's why people collect paraphernalia, show up at, I don't know, auctions for junk, that kind of thing.
He regards you levelly for a moment and then says in a sort of inscrutable tone, he says, "Humor me, were you one of those humanities students?"
Oh, brutal, devastated, unrecoverable. Yes. Double major.
He smirks and he says, "I thought so. However, you shall not find that I am so hostile to the notion. After all, so much of what we do in the applied sciences is an outgrowth of the imagination, yes?
Can hardly do something before one imagines it.
Well said, well said. Cato."
I nod as though he has done me a great kindness by calling me Cato.
"I have no particular interest in sending my students to a ink and paper bookstore. However, you seem to have your finger on the pulse of the youth in this district, and you are a charming individual, and you're certainly a very practical, technologically minded one." He pauses as though he just had a thought. He says, "You wouldn't happen to be a singularist, would you?"
Oh, well, I suppose if you ask that question, you have the rest of the afternoon free. It's a complicated question.
He chuckles. He says, "That is a fairly good answer. I am familiar with this storefront of yours, the frontispiece. I have not been in, but I have seen it. Perhaps I should pay you a visit, look over some of your merchandise at some point. In the meantime, surely you had some other purpose than marketing to come seek me out specifically. I only teach 80, 90 students per semester. You could not possibly have hoped to increase your revenue simply by visiting me. What is it that you want?"
Well, you're a perceptive individual. My purpose is not entirely commercial. And I want to be very clear here. I am not in any way accusing any of your students in particular of illicit activity, or indeed of the GPol student body generally. It's just that I've heard troubling rumors. Troubling rumors, you see, that there was more to that nasty business with the warehouse just recently, that something illicit was involved. And as someone who has been unfairly accused of illicit activity on more than one occasion, as someone who tries to steer the youth right, I suppose I just wanted to poke around and see if there was anything to it, and, if possible, steer the young away.
This is a really good time for a third cool check.
Just how cool am I? 6 and a 1. That's a 7.
You are averagely cool.
He sort of leans back in
And
his
in the-
chair, and it sort of like rocks back a little bit on its rolling foundation, and he regards you levelly with his hands sort of crossed over his midriff, clasped together, fingers interlocked, sort of eyes narrowed, and he says, "Well, Keto, I think I should need to trust you quite a bit more before we discuss such things. In this moment, I think I shall ask you to allow my students to have their run of my office hours, should they require it, and perhaps we should talk in your store sometime a little later. No?
Suits me fine. We've plenty of things that are retro, and there's much to discuss as far as the singularists and whatever else.
He gestures at the USB drive that you brought. He says, "Perhaps I could return this to you when I visit, or should you need it back right this moment?"
Oh, no, consider it a gift, and you can bring it back if you like. Just don't load it with malware.
He chuckles in a polite way, and makes a sort of magnanimous gesture with his hand and says, "Well, I appreciate it. I am fairly well set for thumb drives, so I shall bring it back to you when I next see you. In the meantime, you should have yourself a very lovely evening, and try to stay clear of any warehouse fires, no?"
You as well, of course. I give a sort of an over-the-top, almost a bow, with, again, just in a way to fan out the larger arm, and without knocking anything over, hopefully sort of draw attention to the fiddler crabbishness of my overall aspect.
He makes a gracious nod and says, "Dankeschön, Herr Keto," and then goes back to whatever he was doing on his laptop before.
It should be noted, perhaps, for the listeners, that a great deal of the delight of that interaction derived from Drew's expressions as he salesmaned his way through that.
Yes. I wish the listeners could have seen his facial expressions the whole time. They were artful.
Hopefully you heard them. One can sort of hear a wolfish smile. I guess we didn't establish this beforehand, but is there anything surreptitiously hidden in that hard drive, in that thumb drive there, Burn? Did we, or is that a roll? No, didn't risk it.
Why would I do that?
That's a good point.
I'm the face of innocence.
I can't think of a single reason why you would, and I can't think of any scenario in which you would do it and not tell me. That seems inconceivable.
Inconceivable.
I keep using that word, but I'm not sure. Well, anyway, I walk out of the office.
Yeah, you leave the door ajar as you head out, and you don't see anyone on the way out because it is, after all, a Saturday evening before the semester has begun. You doubt he'll be getting any students in office hours, whatever it was that he said about dismissing you. Doesn't seem
the hallway is
likely.
conspicuously empty, huh?
Yeah, you can actually hear the buzzing of the fluorescent lights.
I reach up with the large arm and brush them very lightly.
The buzzing is unchanged.
But somehow more appreciative. Oh, wait.
Are you
wrong
heading
campaign.
back? Are you heading back to the frontispiece?
I am, and I'm on the way. I send a message to the secure group chat saying he definitely knows more than he's letting on, and he wants to stop by and talk. We'll make sure the back room is nice and secure.
I send a message back, so that means I don't have to pull him over in his moped.
I didn't say that.
I send back the devil face smiley emoji.
Perfect. So, having taken care of our two Saturday evening specific actions here, that leaves what Byrne and Cal are up to, which I understand mostly to be research.
It's what all the coolest kids do on Saturday night.
I mean, for my definitions of cool, certainly. We will have an opportunity, I think, a little bit later to go over what exactly, Byrne, you find out about Professor Vecht and the various generative AI players in Grand Cross.
Marvelous.
But that is taking up the majority of your evening here. Now, Cal, somewhat less time was spent with you sort of checking into Professor Vecht's Polytechnic Security Solutions, accessible profile, and finding out about his moped and his complaints thereabout. Was there anything else research-wise that you wished to accomplish, or perhaps a different tack you wish to take this Saturday night?
So have I looked at Mr. Choi yet?
You have not looked at Mr. Choi yet.
I may do that, but as discreetly as possible.
Yeah, so not going through PSS systems, but just
Correct.
kind of looking at it in general. So go ahead then and give me an investigation roll. Your investigation here is +2, and your clever is +3, so this would be 2d6 +5.
Woohoo. The den dice have served me well today. I've got a 6 and a 4, so that's 10 plus 5 is a 15.
15, excellent. So it, takes you research amounts of time, but you do sort of in the course of the evening turn up not just the easy things about where the Selden District greengrocer owned by a Mr. Choi is, but you find out that this sort of somewhere between a produce stand and an organic grocery store was one of the sort of first businesses that opened up in this area after the station officially opened, that Mr. Choi has been the proprietor the whole time. He has not shrunk or expanded his business in the entire time he has been on station. In fact, you don't have access to his financial statements or anything, but just from what you can find in both a sort of general search and a somewhat more pointed investigation of public records, it seems like his business is perhaps suspiciously consistent.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't be able to present anything in court, but it sort of tickles your investigator sense a little bit. You find that he is sort of on the outskirts of Selden District, which is a little unusual for this kind of business. As you get to the edges of Selden District into larger Turing Ward, things tend to get a little bit more Silicon Valley in space and a little bit less, sort of small businessy. So his location is perhaps a testament to the longevity of his business. Before these patterns were sort of reified, he had sort of staked out his spot here, and it seems to be going, if not strong, then as strong as it ever has been here on sort of the edge of Selden.
And what we found out from K&B was that he might be an informant for Vrutech.
Well, it seems like he might be some sort of information broker generally. K&B suggested that he might have information on Vrutech's facilities that were not available as matters of public record.
Excellent. Okay. Well, at some point, I think it would be wise for me to give him a visit.
Okay.
Prep-wise.
Yeah, that I think is certainly accomplishable in the window for prep, if not necessarily on a Saturday evening.
And can you remind me Caleb's role in this? Is he more related to the thing we have at the frontispiece, or more related to Vrutech?
certainly seems more related to the thing you have at the frontispiece, though that is conjectural at this point because he has refused to speak in sort of straightforward statements.
Oh, that's right. That's Canopus. Sorry.
Yeah, Caleb is Canopus, who came and talked in sort of thuddingly significant tones about a shared dream.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to debate. I guess like we're getting ready for the Rutech mission, so that would be the most imminent thing on my radar. So I'll hold off on investigating around Caleb's place for now.
I will point out that the most recently delinquent payment that got law enforcement involved in terms of his housing was not particularly close by. He doesn't seem to be particularly local. His address is in a neighborhood in Mariposa Ward, which is one plate over and 3 wards down, sort of a middle plate. A middle ward on Vern plate. The neighborhood is one you're not familiar with, called Marcia Stretch.
Okay. So not something I can easily take care of in one fell swoop. It's either or scenario.
I mean, going to investigate Caleb/Canopus would be a commute at the very least.
So I guess I can visit Mr. Choi.
All right. It is, well, I guess since you have your PSS transport, if you wish to take it, you would be not too long in the traveling. You make your way over to, I suppose it's probably called Choi's Produce, on the edge of Selden District, and you see that the space is a relatively small indoor space with a little bit of kind of displayed produce outside with some signs advertising the particular freshest of the day and particular deals and whatnot. The door is propped open, but no one is outside watching over the stands outdoors. This area is not high pedestrian traffic. There's some residences, mostly above what appear to be like law offices, consultancies. There are a couple of small offices of like educational tutoring and test preparation services, career planning services. It's offices in this area with residences above them. Mr. Choi's business is perhaps one of the very few sort of retail establishments in view.
Here's a question that may be silly, but this is outside of PSS's district?
Not technically. This would be in an area of shared jurisdiction. It's not campus, but it is Selden District, and you have sort of joint jurisdiction here with station security.
Oh, okay. Excellent. I'm going to head straight inside then.
Okay. You walk in the propped open door, and you're greeted with a cramped space with a relatively low ceiling and fluorescent lights, probably the size of, let's call it your average American living room, with sort of a swinging door to a back space where presumably shipments are received and books are kept and such. There is a very small stub of counter where checkout happens just inside the door, but it is unmanned currently. And the rest of the space is taken up with sort of horizontal bins and vertical shelves that have almost entirely produce with some cereal grains and one wall of sort of like shelf-stable boxed goods ranging from pressed fruit bars through jambalaya mixes and couscous and such.
I'm going to check the expiration date on a few of those and see if there's something that has, it implies that they're not frequently stocked, which is the hunch I have.
Let's see. Nothing that is on the shelves in boxes features a sell-by date, which in and of itself is perhaps a little suspicious.
Mm-hmm. Anyone visible that's an employee currently?
Not in the time it takes you to check those. No one has seemed to respond to your presence, nor has there been any evident movement in the area.
I'm going to keep milling about and see if someone comes out.
After a little less than a minute of you sort of browsing, the swinging door to the back does push open. It is well oiled. You almost don't hear it other than the whoomp of it sort of being impacted by someone's shoulder and displacing air. And a fairly young fellow, perhaps in his 20s, with a moderately sun-kissed complexion and sort of dark hair buzzed close on the sides, with the top sort of styled at a 45-degree angle to his right. Sort of heavy eyebrows, green t-shirt, sort of half apron in just kind of an untreated canvas color, and Docker's style work khakis and boots, bustles in with a tray of what appear to be relatively fresh strawberries. And after a couple steps, takes note of you. And he says, welcome. Let me know if I can help you find anything.
Does he have a name tag on?
No name tag, no.
I'll just look at him and say, looking for a Mr. Choi.
As he goes and puts individual green plastic baskets of strawberries into a display, he says, well, that's good for you. You found him. What can I do for you?
Well, I've heard a lot of interesting chatter about this place, so I figured it was worth checking out. I casually pick up a fruit bar box and stare at it once again.
Point of order question, Robin.
Mm-hmm.
Is Cal in their uniform?
I would assume so.
Okay.
Just because of the district and the fact
don't
that I
exist
had to
in it.
drive on my cycle, my scooter.
Yeah, I was assuming uniformed as well.
Mm-hmm.
But he seems unflapped, unperturbed. He doesn't particularly look at you as he continues to sort of distribute the strawberries into the display. And he says, well, I'm glad word of mouth has brought you here. If you need any fresh vegetables, we have some fresh fruits as well. As you see, we have some boxed goods for accompanying our fresher produce. What are you looking for?
More interested in the fruits of your labor. You've been here since the beginning, and yet you haven't felt any need to expand.
He shrugs one shoulder as he sort of finishes distributing the strawberries and says, well, business has been good, but perhaps not that good. This is prime real estate, yes, and it is hard to expand, but I've managed to hold on to what's mine, and people seem to like my produce. I am very choosy after all. Finishing putting the strawberries in place, he sort of turns to face you and leans back against the edge of the display he was working with, and casually crosses his arms, not in any sort of combative or standoffish way, but just sort of a more comfortable, relaxed look. He doesn't smile, but he doesn't glare either. He has sort of a bland customer service expression on as he regards you.
I understand you might also be selling fruits of knowledge here?
I've seen them a couple of times, but I couldn't say that I sell tickets. They're good. You should go.
I didn't realize it was also a band.
Well,
Look.
now you know, and they put on a good show.
What type of music?
Sort of a low-key punk, very queercore, I suppose you'd call it. They're quite a spectacle.
I know some folks that may enjoy them. I appreciate the recommendation, but unfortunately that's not why I'm here today. I'm hoping you could
I
point
thought
me...
we might be.
Yeah, I'm hoping you could point me in the right direction pertaining to a case I'm working on.
Oh, well, officer, I'm always happy to assist the law. Now he does smile.
I don't offer him a smile back. I'm also willing to ensure that our conversation remains discreet, as the case may be.
Well, I suppose how necessary that is depends on you. And he sort of pushes himself off of the display and goes over to where the sort of point of sale is. Now, hard cash is prosecutes a minority of the transactions on Grand Cross, but he starts counting out the till anyway.
Looking for some information about Vrutech.
Looking to buy some textbooks then?
No. They are currently potentially infringing on the rights of certain individuals as a means of furthering their business and cornering the market, and it concerns me.
At this point, now that you are trying to get something from him in particular, this would be a great time to roll your cool, which for you is going to be 2d6 plus 2.
Congratulations, you're cooler than Kato.
I've got a 5 and a 3 plus 2, so that's a 10.
All right. He sort of regards you critically, but not skeptically.
Mm-hmm.
And closes the drawer on the register and sort of takes a couple steps around the side of the counter and casually kicks the doorstep like out from under the door and into the thoroughfare outside, the door falling closed slowly on its arm. And he hooks his thumbs into the drawstring band of his half apron, rocks on his heels, and says, "Well, as an officer, I'm sure we can come to an arrangement. How can I help you? What is it you need to know about Vrutech?"
Okay. I guess this will be table talk. But K and B suggested he might be one that knows more about the building.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
We don't know how or what he would know, but that is sort of the tip we got.
Yeah, I think it was more a matter of architecture and infiltration opportunities rather than network things, possibly.
Seemed that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Mr. Choi, I was hoping you could tell me more about their place of operation, the building, any information you may have on it. I'm happy to turn my investigative gaze on them and help you stay off of the police radio.
He gives you an appraising look and he says, "Well, I appreciate the offer. I'm already well off the police radio. Unless you're planning to put me on it, in which case I wouldn't be so much inclined to help you out."
No
He
intention
pauses.
of that currently.
Well, that's good to hear. And really, Mr. Choi was my father. Call me Brock.
Okay,
In the
Brock.
meantime, I'm happy to give you the information that you need. I don't know if you know this, but I used to work for Vrutech. Back when they were Earth Corporation, anyway. I've kept some contacts. I could get you the information that you need. Not tonight, but I would require some payment up front. I think it is only fair.
I think that's a fair shake, Brock. How much are we talking?
He sort of sizes you up a little bit and says, I don't usually deal with police, but you seem an all right sort. And, well, Vertek isn't exactly the good guys here. And he names an amount that is roughly equivalent to 2 cash.
Dang.
Do any of us have ready availability to cash?
I believe Ing might.
I've got 2.
Oh. Yeah, I don't have that on me right now. Double checking. I don't know why I'm double checking. Like, my character is a dead ass broke.
I
turned to
mean, I would
Brock.
imagine that, like, your shakedown business seems like it should generate you some cash. Narratively, if not mechanically.
Just chiming in, I don't know that we've ever established for certain that Cal shakes down any businesses other than the frontispiece because it is doing criminal things that they are looking the other way on.
I mean, that is one of the things that I have an ongoing research role on that hasn't
It's
yet
true.
had results.
We will probably get to it immediately after we finish the scene here with Cal, but in terms of starting cash, nobody really had any, and Ing has gotten some pay that was from the frontispiece in a slightly embezzled manner.
Brock, I can make sure you get the cash. I'm also happy to offer non-cash payment, as the case may be, if you need information. A little quid pro quo is what I'm talking about, kid.
He regards you, again, not unkindly, but critically, and says, I'm not opposed to trading in favors, but, well, you and I are roughly strangers, so it is hard to have significant trust.
Trust is hard to
However,
come by these days.
That doesn't mean we can't do business. So, tell you what, I will put together what I know, and you can put together either the money or something you think is worth the same amount approximately, and you can meet me for, and he actually makes air quotes, lunch tomorrow. You know, his place of business, nobody else is here. He says, let's exchange contact IDs, and I'll send you a message 10 in the morning. If you show up, we do business. If not, I forget we ever had this conversation. No harm, no foul. Yeah?
I give him an approving look and then hold out my hand to shake.
He glances at it, glances up at your face for like a second and a half, and then shakes your hand firmly. And he says, I think we'll get along just fine, officer.
I think so too, Brock.
Your augvert goes off. He keeps his face studiously blank.
I maintain steady eye contact as though I can't
About
hear
5
the
seconds
thing.
into it, it cuts off abruptly.
If you have any direction in particular you'd like me to turn my eye for information, I'm happy to entertain your preferences.
He sort of regards you, head tilted for a moment, turns, and picks up a huge cluster, I guess might be the word for it. I am not familiar with the lingo here, of very fresh bok choy, and sort of holds it out to you and says, I could always use good information on Lou Tupper if you're able to provide it. But you should take this. It's good for stir fry, good for hot pots.
I take the
Feed a
bok choy.
family.
And my lip quirks a little bit as I say, I hope from this initial conversation our trust grows, because there's a lot I could say about that man, and there's a lot that I couldn't.
He chuckles and says, I know the feeling. Well, while you figure out what it is you can say and can't say, I will gather my information on Rutek, and hopefully we'll have a productive conversation tomorrow, yes?
Indeed. I'll be here promptly at 10 a.m.
I'll send you where to be.
Fair enough. I give him... Now I'm thinking that I would probably have a front-facing contact number and then also like a private one.
That makes sense.
I'll give him the private contact number.
All right. And he exchanges with you what appears to be his like business email, essentially, and assures you that he keeps up with it religiously, and then tells you to enjoy the bok choy.
Would I have a
and holds the
burn
door open.
email if we're exchanging emails?
An email for burn, or
like not a burn email for
burner.
burn,
burner?
but a burner email. Yeah,
a
sorry.
burner email. I mean, I guess that's up to you. I don't, I guess, know how technologically old you imagine Cal as being. But it's possible you'd have a burner email or the ability to set one up.
Yeah, I'll have like a I have a burner email that is then blue line at whatever the equivalent of Gmail is.
Ooh. Ew.
Oh, that
I
got
am
me
very
good.
sorry for the physical pain that I just caused us. But something appropriate that would appear to be a cop's personal email.
Sure, yeah.
Appropriate, sure.
And that's what I give him instead of my phone number. I'm retconning this just a little bit because I didn't realize emails were on the
That's
table.
fine.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So you give him this cop flavored burner email, and he gives you what appears to be his business email, and tells you to enjoy the produce, and then holds the door open for you as you head out.
Thank you, Brock. And be well.
Thank you, officer. This is perhaps a really good time for us to then check in with Burn.
We said burner email multiple times, and that summoned him.
Now, you have been running a couple of sort of searches and research sort of queries and traces and such. The biggest bust you have is that Ruprecht Vecht seems to be extremely boring. Your digital trace on Professor Vecht basically shows that he has presented at a couple of conferences, both on Grand Cross and digitally back on Earth. The topics of his research seem to be arcane but not particularly interesting aspects of applied robotics and applied mechanics. It's not exactly like deeply outside of your wheelhouse, but it is, shall we say, disappointingly practical in most cases. As far as you
Tragic.
can tell, the only interesting thing he's done in the realm of the internet or things that are archived digitally is that he participated in he was an audience member specifically in a Singularist live stream that involved Kova Levy, that he was attempting to ask more questions than was seemly in. But he doesn't seem to be overly active in Singularist spaces generally. This is one of a very few sort of links to Singularist spaces that he has been involved in. And even then, the questions he was asking were on the level of trolley problems, not overly interesting. On the other hand, your feelers sent out about generative AI stuff, or I guess as you would probably call it in the Hardwired Island version of the timeline, generative algorithms, since AI is a little bit different. Vrutech is among the scrappier players. Their security is frustratingly good, but there aren't any companies that are less secure or smaller or scrappier that have their own algorithms. Everybody smaller or scrappier than Vrutech licenses code from the bigger players and then slaps a trendy name on it and tries to market it. You do find that one of the chatbots in particular, the large language model based things, is associated with the Indifferent Ape on Wii Club.
Not to be concerned, or not to be confused with Concerned Ape.
No, very different.
Legally
from the
distinct
developer
in
of
any
Stardew Valley. I feel kind of bad for Concerned Ape having their spot blown up by NFT organizations after the fact. In any case, the Indifferent Ape Ennui Club has licensed an LLM in order to promote their blockchain token in ways that are deeply unclear to you in terms of how it's supposed to work. That is perhaps the least reputable, least secure thing that you can find, but of course it wouldn't lead anywhere useful. So it seems like Vrutech might be the bottom of the food chain here.
Okay. Well, at least we've established that. Is there anything that I've gleaned about, or rather, once I've established that, then I would start honing in on their potential digital vulnerabilities.
Sure.
Have they suffered any hacks, ransomware, exfiltrations, any of those sorts of things?
They seem to have flown under the radar for most of those kinds of attacks and scams because they are lower profile than most of their competitors who suffer the majority of those kinds of attacks and breaches. What Vrutech does have that's notable is and I think I mentioned this last time, really headache-inducing DRM scheme on their digital text and media products. What you learn about this DRM scheme is that it means that all of their digital media products phone home, which is in and of itself potentially a vulnerability. They're small enough that nobody has tried to take massive advantage of that vulnerability yet, but perhaps you could be the trailblazer.
I'd like to start in on that, please.
Very good. Let's have you give us a roll, specifically a hacking roll, which I believe is +6, 2d6 +6 for you.
And so that is a 17.
17. You spend the majority of your evening crafting the perfect worm for this particular application. And all it really takes is a little bit of a hitchhike on some data packets, and you have it propagating through their systems. It
Excellent.
probably won't get you anything golden until school starts, but by the end of
what I'm after at the moment is a delayed key, as it were. Something that might open the world once I'm in there, since we apparently do have to go physically in.
Indeed, yeah, the information that you will need to alter or scrub to clear K and B is kept on servers accessible only through the infrastructure of their corporate HQ, according to K and B. And so what you've got now is, as soon as people start using DRM locked media in your vicinity, you will be fed their credentials. This should be relatively automatic and not undetectable, but by the time it's detected, it will probably be too late. Is there anything else you want to particularly attempt to accomplish with your evening?
I'll continue with my research on the good officer.
Very well.
Or at least the officer, and demonstrating that they're not actually good.
I adore
So,
this.
previously, you had been able to sift through PSS records, public news on Grand Cross, which didn't really turn up anything particularly interesting. Where Officer Armitage appeared at all, they were just, and there they were. Nothing particularly interesting there. So one of the things that you get to immediately is noting the information that the good officer has turned up on Kovalevy, Singularist NAI researcher, and the connection there to Kovalevy spending some time and having some connections on GPol. You do sort of move to what we might call like a new layer of Officer Armitage's history, because while the PSS stuff is all pretty anodyne and boring, there is some older coverage that is about, or mostly actually mentions rather than being centrally about, a Cal Armitage officer that is mostly what you might call like also ran news coverage about misconduct involving alcohol and drugs. The specifics are lacking, somewhat notably so. And this might actually be a good moment for you to just make like a straight clever roll for me. 2d6 plus 3.
7 becomes 10.
This doesn't really pass your smell test. The lack of specifics, the use of anonymous sources, the sort of mentioning of these misconduct charges without
Specifics.
particular reference to like cases or like court appearances. This smells to you like something a little more political than actual. You can't point to proof, but that's kind of where your instinct takes you.
I'll note the outfit that published it, and probably, get their systems a bit dirty too and looking.
Okay. There are a couple. Nothing particularly major in terms of current day Grand Cross news. There seems to be some confusion in the reporting about the exact nature of the drug and alcohol offenses, which again sort of raises an eyebrow on your part. Some of the reporting is about being generically intoxicated on duty. Other parts are about trafficking illegal drugs. Though those are sometimes in contradiction. Was this an incident where the officer was supposed to be intoxicated or was supposed to have been transporting illicit substances? In one case, there is an accusation of actual bootlegging of alcohol, which a little bit of research will show wouldn't actually have violated the laws in question for the locations in question. So the reporting seems to be just fabulism. Yeah. And again, none of this is like headline news. This is somewhere between police blotter and like local reporting. So either the officer has an unexpectedly, well, I guess I'll leave it to you what you expected, but a incongruously checkered past, or there's been some kind of character assassination, or maybe both.
Oh, it's both, clearly.
This leads you to believe that there might be more to find, but that you'll be doing a little bit more of a targeted and in-depth search further back in the past to find it.
Oh, yes. I probably start going through superiors that they may have pissed off.
Not perhaps a bad way to go. And we will loop back around to it in time.
Excellent.
So at this point, my inclination is to inquire as to anybody having specific things they want to do before turning in Saturday night. If not, then that's fine. But if so, I don't want to leave anybody in the cold.
I do two things. One thing I do is send a message to Bronwy saying that perhaps we should talk about something additional. And the other thing I do is, as I unlock a drawer that I have locked that has the gun Cal gave me, I send Cal a message with deep shame saying, "You should probably teach me how to use this thing."
I send a thumbs up in response.
I have never been this sad.
I probably also, as I go through both my research into Cal and my research of Cal's research, and my research of Rutek, am looking for sort of opportunities to cash in some of this.
Okay.
Just
I will give that a
gonna
little
put
bit of
that
thought.
out there.
Yeah. I will give that a little bit of thought. Anything else before bedtime?
I'll just briefly drop Byrne a line, suggesting that if Byrne does have the opportunity to gather some just raw information, social media presence, private files, whatnot, of security employees at Vrutech, that I could sift through that information for Byrne and for us to put together some psychological profiles that could be useful.
I'm going to put that in the group prep stack.
Yep.
And that will be something to pick up Sunday morning.
I would like to look up one Brock Choi on the Bacon Network. I just realized I essentially said network twice by phrasing it that way. I'm just going to look up Brock Choi on Bacon. Indeed.
Bacon has nothing to say on Bok Choy.
I'm going to do it on networks that will be more discreet than PSS then.
Bok Choy does not show up in any of them.
Impressive. Okay. Well, I guess I better decide on what information about Lou Tepper I will share, and I'll pull up documents accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you spend a little bit of time preparing stuff that you're going to provide your greengrocer with. Credit where it's due. The Bacon Network was given the inspiration for its name from Dimension 20's Fantasy High's gnome family, who seemed to appear incidentally in the first instance and then appeared later on shooting up a police station.
Oh my gosh.
Just a really aw shucks sort of like Midwestern suburban sounding gnome family going, all right, guys, let's make some bacon. Absolutely peak Dimension 20 peak Brennan Lee Mulligan. So credit where it's due. So eventually everybody winds their way down for the evening, and dinner is caught as can be caught. And
have some fresh bok choy to serve up.
You do, yeah. You can blanch it, you can stir fry it, you can slice it up and have it in a salad.
Do I have any idea what to do with it?
I don't know. Have you prepared bok choy before?
I feel like I'm more of a instant dinner.
It'll really gussy up some ramen noodles, let me tell you.
Oh, that's probably exactly what I do with it. I put it in some
a recipe appears.
Yeah, if you will allow me to editorialize a little bit, you order some delivery from a sort of Grand Cross local chain called Send Nudes.
Yes.
NOODZ. And you slice up some bok choy and garnish your delivery ramen with it. Honestly, it's delicious.
Out of habit, I do offer to order some from Ing, but then remember myself and quickly go through the menu to see if there's anything that could be appropriate.
You know what? They have a stock base that could actually be useful for some of the flesh horticulture, if you want to request it.
I do. Of course I do.
I order that.
Marvelous. You and the arm have a lovely little dinner, and it smells delicious. And Sunday morning arrives. This would be January the 5th.
For reference, I'm probably up until it is technically, one of those up so early or down so late times.
Of course. Yeah. Hacker time.
I'm glad we're all clear on this.
Of course.
I'm going to do a little bit of a sort of going around the circle here. Ing, what are your personal and group prep operations that you are planning for the coming week?
I would like to see if I can sift through any data that we're able to get a hold of the employees of Vrutech, particularly security, but perhaps some others. Some of that might be sociological, kind of understanding of the organization, how it works from a psychological perspective, in the hopes that if we are ending up in a social situation with any of them or a confrontation, that maybe that would be useful.
Marvelous. Now, I know that you are also going to be sort of queuing Burn for some of that information as well. And presumably some of that information will be both coming from Burn and from Cal. So that makes it a pretty good opportunity for group prep. Was there anything else that might fall under personal prep that you might be doing to prepare here? You should feel free to defer this to next session if you wish, but if you have any ideas, this is a good time.
I mean, I think that something that's going to be a little bit longer term and probably will have to happen after this mission in terms of moving forward with it, but that I might start researching now is non-lethal methods of incapacitating violent people.
Well, that's an ominous statement right there.
Perfect.
Like
Ominous
a real...
compared to me just shooting people.
You're a cop.
Look, this is a thing that I've been over before. There's what we perceive as violence and what is actually violence. And a lot of the time we excuse police violence where we are particularly attentive to civilian
separately,
violence.
like, we are at best vaguely aware of Ing's nature? Question mark? And this set of statements of I would like to research because I don't know how to non-lethally incapacitate people being violent at me.
It's a beautiful statement.
Quite the statement that none of us really know about.
What flashed into my mind was the augment from Deus Ex Human Revolution where your arms launch like 30 grenades and just kill everybody in your immediate vicinity.
Yeah. So mechanically speaking, there is a sticky shocker in the rule book that costs 4, and I don't have 4.
Indeed, you do not.
But I would be really looking for a very last resort solution that is entirely non-lethal.
Good to note. Now, Burn, you have been sort of tapped by Ing to help with the analysis of Rutech security personnel and similar when that information is available.
Sure,
but
I suspect I'm focusing less on the psychology and more providing files and expropriating access.
Certainly. And in terms of personal prep, is there anything that you particularly think you might be focusing on?
Escape routes.
Good call.
Architecture of the building generally, but like ways to get myself and preferably others out from more or less anywhere. Like, these can also double as entryways, but escape routes.
Yeah. Good. Officer Armitage, any ideas for personal and or group prep?
So of course I am pulling up a safe, but not so safe as to be worthless. Whatever amounts to 2 cache of information on Lou Tupper. I'm also going to teach Kato how to operate the firearm with all of the gruff cop shit that would be expected with such a process. And I may work with Burn as much as possible without saying please on keeping myself anonymous during the infiltration, or at least not letting it get back to the Popo-Pacho.
Sounds good. So yeah, that seems to cover sort of.
So basically, we do things mediated through your cell phone.
Yeah, and that seems to maybe point to what Kato's personal prep may be. Kato, any particular additional thoughts on personal and or group prep?
Yeah, so I will be taking gun and gruffness lessons from the officer, and I will rethink dualism as my soul leaves my body as I do so. aside from that, I'm going to try and get in touch with Bronwy in order to do sort of a fixer prep for the Vrutech mission. See if anybody in my contact list, tip my hand just a little and see if anyone knows anything that might be useful, keep us safe, cut a hole in their security, etc.
Very good.
I did forget an element of prep.
Sure.
So
this is collaborative. Let's even say we talk about it while you're teaching me to shoot a gun.
Yeah. I'm going to try to run Vrutech through my non-PSS networks, meaning I'm taking any employee information that the others might have discovered and putting it through just my usual trolling of public records as a private investigator, and also bacon as need be to see if there's any points of pressure that I can apply before we go that would create them to be cause them to be short-staffed or anything of that nature.
I'm also going to check the vulnerabilities reports that have come out variously in the last... I mean, I do this extremely on the regular, so I know what routes are soon to be closed to me, but I think it's safe to assume Vrutech is probably not patching their 0 days as assiduously as might be hoped for.
Yeah, we can certainly find out. And so having sort of announced all of our intentions for prep, given the timing of this session and how it has gone, I think we will do our resolution and rolling for all of that next time. What I will sort of end on here is that Cato, you had messaged Bronwy sort of relatively early in the day on Saturday asking if she knew if anybody had it out for you, and not heard back immediately. But not immediately, but relatively shortly after your sort of follow-up there, you will actually hear back from Bronwy. Bronwy will tell you that it doesn't seem like anybody knows it's you, but most of Selden District has it in for whoever was involved in that auction, and it is a big enough deal that she may have to sort of pack up and move shop. The rest we'll handle next time. But it seems like in the background of all of your preparations to handle K&B's problems, the auction and its aftermath are perhaps getting to be quite a big deal.
So much for keeping her out of it. New roommate.
Yeah, which could be both to your advantage and, well, the other thing.
Right.
So I know this is not an especially dramatic place to end our session, but time-wise, it's probably about
I don't know.
that time.
You declared that most of Selden District has it out for us, even if they don't know it's us.
Yeah, the don't know it's you part is perhaps a little bit,
Silver lining.
That's a way to put it. Yeah. But if there aren't any other sort of last, thoughts or actions here, that can conclude our session of Dice Punks. Anybody need to get anything in right before the end here? All right. In that case, thanks for joining us, listeners. I hope our players and listeners enjoyed it as much as I did, and that you'll join us again next time. If you're hearing us now, then you probably know where to listen to this, but we can be found almost any place one can listen to podcasts, as well as on the wider web at dicepunks.com, and on co-host, Tumblr, and now Blue Sky as @dicepunks. With that, I think we're ready to say farewell, so say goodbye to the kind folks at home back on Earth, players.
Thanks for listening. Read old books. When necessary, steal old books.
Thank you for listening, everyone. Learn how to cook bok choy. Don't eat like a cop.
Thanks for listening, folks. And if in the process of securing your own OPSEC before you help force others to secure theirs, you find things that are valuable, take them.
Thanks for joining us, folks. Clever catchphrase.
I can hear the brackets around that one.
.exe.
.txt. And as the poet once said, throw a tantrum, hold a sign, as the infantry arrives, we'll take back the city tonight. Beloved listeners, thank you for tuning in. Stick around through the admin stuff for some Cato logging. The music in this episode, Augment or Die, is by Emerson Boatwright and our very own bookmonger, Drew. Check out their other work at the link in the show notes. Editing and our rad new cover art was done by Joanne, who's appeared on the podcast now and again. Check out her work around the internet where she goes by Anything Sows. Site design and graphics for DicePunks.com are by the one and only Officer Armitage, Robin. Hardwired Island is by Paul Matjevic, Freya Erlingsdottir, and McNerva McJonda. You can find Hardwired Island at edin.itch.io/hard-wired-island. Links to the system and authors can be found on the Punk Grimoire section of our website, dicepunks.com. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, that's reward enough on its own, but if you're so inclined, you can help us out by rating and reviewing us wherever you listen to us, telling your friends who you think would like us to give us a listen, and even by heading over to our Patreon at patreon.com/dicepunks. We have fun rewards available to backers, including a patron-only Discord and access to the Dice Peaks after show for episodes 1.1 and following. Regardless, we hope you'll tune in again, and until then, remember, subtlety is for cowards.
These zip disks, all dusty, mostly cracked, definitely don't just contain textbooks. This does seem like an illicit cache of every book published the year that this tech first appeared. Someone's own weird, expensive, obsessive, time-intensive, remarkably illegal archive project. There's something portentous about emotional intelligence, some purported dreck called the millionaire next door. There are names that kids today wouldn't recognize or would be embarrassed to admit, among certain crowds anyway, that they only half recognize. Nick Hornby? Philip Pullman? Gregory Maguire? Barack Obama? There's something in here called Left Behind. That rings a bell, like a clattering of pots falling stochastically a few rooms away. John Grisham and James Patterson, everyone knows those. Old Earth authors still putting out pot boilers that the dads eat up, triple-crossed, the albatross algorithm, that sort of stuff, on and on forever. Some of these are mostly images, despite the minuscule size of the media. Aeon Flux, The Far Side, a 60-year retrospective of DC Comics, The Last of the Nuba, a book of photographs by Leni Riefenstahl. Even some of these that are textbooks, some of them are for elementary school. Economics Today and Tomorrow, American Government, Roots and Reform, Government by the People, National, State and Local Version, Confidence, Optimism, all dusty, mostly cracked. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a box of floppy disks, one of GD-ROMs, another smaller one of punch cards. I take a sip of coffee, then another, and I decide to take a break.